Let's have a little occult chat, shall we? This is your host, the Occult View. I just been sitting back and re-examining different information. Some people may say that I'm an occult conspiracy theorist, and I'll take that title. I like to look beyond the conspiracy and really get to the the fat meat, the juice, and the meat and the potatoes of what's really going on within the universe and the universe. Well, rather, the universe is outside of us, but the universe is what's going on inside of us, and how sometimes the universe can affect our universe. You feel what I'm saying? So I've recently been going back looking at this show called The Autopsy of the Last Hours of So and so, et cetera, et cetera. And that show used to come on some channel, I believe, on TV, but it no longer comes on that channel. I think it's on different apps. Basically, it's autopsies in the last few days or few months or few years of certain celebrities before they passed away. And I've been going back watching that show. And the reason that I've been going back watching that show, and I know a lot of people say, well, people are going to die. Yeah, I get that. I get that. And it could be nothing there. But by me having the occult, suspicious mind that I have, I always wonder, if they hadn't have done this or if they hadn't have said that, would they have been, you know, perceivingly taken out? Let's just say that. So let's have a chat. So I went back and I looked at the autopsy of Joan Rivers. And for people who do not know, Joan Rivers was a well-known stand-up female comedian. She was very controversial in her comedy. My friend, he's not here right now, so hopefully I can do this video in peace. Um, because a lot of times when I try to do videos, he comes in and then I'll stop him because I don't want him hearing everything I'm saying, child. You know how that go. But she was a stand-up female comedian and she was a trailblazer for a lot of women, in the comedic realm, which was mainly dominated by men for the longest time. And a lot of people felt like Joan Rivers was very controversial. Some people didn't like her. Some people did like her. Me personally, I liked her because even though I know a lot of people did not like her because I think she had conservative views, and some people thought of her as being mean. And I guess I guess you can look at it two ways because in actuality, I think that in her personal life, from what I've understood about her, and from the personal accounts of people that have dealt with her, she was a very generous person. And I didn't know her personally. I liked her talent. I think she was funny, and I think she was very fluent in the art of making the worst situations funny. Yeah, she made fun of people. She used to make fun of Elizabeth Taylor like crazy. I remember one time she had put on all of this body what do they call it? That fake body fat, and she was pretending to be Elizabeth Taylor. And she was eating all of these chocolate bunnies and all of these chickens, whole chickens. It was funny as fuck. It was an old time skit that she did. She was funny. And I know a lot of people don't like her form or her fashion of comedy, but she was funny to me. And that is why I can understand why she became so enraged when she did when who was that woman? Frederica something, that interviewer on CNN or one of those shows. Joan Rivers, I think that was one of her last interviews too. Joan Rivers became enraged because the woman was calling her mean. And that would piss me off too if you're trying to low key attack me. You know what I mean? But I think that she was, I don't know what this is, but I think that she was targeted. I think that she was targeted because within her comedy, she also told a lot of truths. And even though it may be uncomfortable truths for a lot of people, I think she told a lot of truth or a lot of conspiracy truth, underlying underworld types of conspiracy theories or occult secrets. And I personally believe that they took her out. And not just her. Not just her. I think they had to take out a lot of people who would have been outspoken in this time period that we're living in now. I also went back and looked at the autopsy of Whitney Houston. Who else did I go back and look at? I went back and looked at Joan Rivers, Whitney Houston, and who else? There was a few other people that I went back and looked at. I had never seen them. Actually, I had never seen them before. It wasn't like I looked at them and I had, recognized. No, I'd never seen them before. But it was another one that I found interesting too. It was Joan Rivers and Whitney Houston. It'll come to me. But anyway, but what I found interesting about Joan Rivers' autopsy and, the events that, or series of events that led up to her death, it was very interesting and it really troubled me because Joan Rivers went to the Yorkville Endoscopy Center in New York for a routine procedure, an endoscopy. For those people who do not know what an endoscopy is, it's when they take a small camera and they stick it down your throat to not only look at your throat, but also to go down into your stomach to see if you have ulcers or any type of gastrointestinal issues or whatever. Not intestinal, but gastro issues. But they were looking at her throat because her throat was raspy. Her voice was raspy, excuse me. And this is a routine procedure. She was 81 years old. She was in excellent health for someone her age. She was not overweight. She had no major issues. No high blood pressure, no diabetes. She had like I said, stable blood pressure. She had no issues whatsoever. So for an 81-year-old woman, she was in damn near good shape. She was in perfect shape for an 81, 82-year-old woman. And personally, I think she should have lived a lot longer. So she goes in to have this procedure done. They put her under, everything was going fine. But then her oxygen level starts to drop. Another doctor comes in, a female doctor. She comes in once they get her oxygen level back up. They did get it back up for a little while. A female doctor comes in and does another unauthorized procedure on her while Joan Rivers is while she's under anesthesia. Because they do put you under anesthesia. Because I've had that procedure before too when I was in my early 20s. Because my stomach, there was something going on with my stomach or something like that. And at that time, I was a cigarette smoker. I don't smoke anymore, but at that time, I was a cigarette smoker. And my stomach was irritated or something. And they looked down in my stomach to see if there was anything going on, And they said it looked irritated, but he didn't want to put me on any medicine or anything like that. But Nevertheless, I've never had any issues, and that's been over 20 years ago. Shit, I'm almost 44 now. My birthday coming up in August. So this is a routine procedure. So they do put you under anesthesia. I said all that to say this. They do put you under anesthesia. But for me, it was like I was halfway woke, halfway asleep. My mother was there because someone had to be there with you. My mother was there in the recovery room to, for when I came out. And I walked out. There was no problems. No problems. My doctor was black. Even though I didn't like that motherfucker, I had to end up cussing his ass out. But, hooray for black doctors. But anyway, they put her under, and her oxygen levels start to drop. And another doctor comes into the room, not her designated doctor. He was there, but an unauthorized doctor. And when I say unauthorized, she was not authorized to do any other procedures on Joan Rivers. This doctor comes in and does another procedure on Joan Rivers while she was under. And this was before, wait a minute, let me back up. This was before her oxygen level dropped. And the anesthesiologist said, I don't think you should do this procedure on her. The other procedure was they wanted to do another procedure. Well, this particular doctor, not they. She wanted to do a procedure where she looked in Joan. She took another similar instrument that did the same exact thing as the endoscopy, but instead of going down her throat, she wanted to stick it up her nose with a small camera on it. And she wanted to look in her throat that way. And the anesthesiologist was like, you know what? I don't think that's a good idea for you to do that. But that doctor, she overruled her and said, basically, mind your motherfucking business, bitch. You're just an anesthesiologist. You don't tell me what to do. I'm a surgeon. Okay? So once this doctor, unauthorized, once she stuck that tube up Joan Rivers' nose with the camera on it, Joan Rivers' oxygen began to drop drastically and dangerously. And then to make a long story short, they could never wake her back up. She never woke back up. She never woke back up. And it was because of that unauthorized doctor. She comes into the room and just starts doing an unauthorized procedure on this woman that was not supposed to be done. That was not on the books for her to do. She was supposed to have an endoscopy that went down her throat, not up her nose. And once she did that, that is when her oxygen level began to drop. Now, what's interesting, and people can get mad about this all they want. I know it's a lot of Michelle Obama fans out there and people that love the Obamas. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck who you love in politics. I don't love none of them motherfuckers. I don't love none of them. Okay? Maybe JFK. I did love JFK, child, even though I wasn't born then, because they said that JFK was the last real politician that we had who really was for the people, and that's why they killed him. That's why they took him out. Just saying. Yeah, so, I love me some JFK. He was fine as a motherfucker, too, for a white boy, but that's another story. But anyway, child, if I was alive back in them days, me and JFK would have been sneaking around too. Let me stop, child. I'm being bad. Anyway, let me stop. So anyway, I would have been the Black Marilyn Monroe. No, I'm playing. I'm just playing. Anyway, but they did say on a side note, they said he was fucking with Dorothy Dandridge too on the low. So he liked him some brown sugar, child. He liked that. But anyway, so I think maybe, was it a year or two, maybe more? I don't know. But not long before Joan Rivers died, may not even been a year or two, may have been shorter. Not long before she died, she made a joke while she was going into some building or something like that. She made a joke about Michelle Obama being transgender. She did make that joke. And while I don't agree with people trying to make black women out to be, men and all that old bullshit, and trying to make black women out to be masculine. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's funny, because I done seen a whole lot of manly looking white women too. I've seen a whole lot of manly looking Latino women too. I've seen a whole lot of manly looking Asian women too. It's so let's not play that motherfucking game. Okay? Any woman can look masculine. That's not just designated to black women, but I don't want to get into I don't want to get into that cesspool. Just like there are men that look feminine, but it's always a problem. And it's always something when they try to, marginalize black women and try to make black women out to be so unattractive and so masculine and so this and so that. It's always a problem. You know what I'm saying? It's always a problem. But anyway, whether I believe Michelle Obama is a transgender person is neither here nor there. I don't really give a fuck either way. But my whole thing is, are we not supposed to be suspicious that after she made that comment, she ended up dead not long after that? Isn't that interesting? And I guess we're supposed to ignore that, right? Lucille Ball, I Love Lucy. She died in 1989. I believe she died on April the 26th. Carolyn Bryant, the woman that had accused, actually falsely accused Emmett Till of coming on to her. And I'm going to say allegedly, because I've been listening to other spiritual, let's just say co-workers, who have been getting information about Miss Carolyn Bryant. And from what I understand, and this didn't come from me, this is me listening to other spiritual co-workers. They were saying that there is an alleged connection between Carolyn Bryant and Lucille Ball and even the Obamas. And I heard this a couple of months back from someone, like I said, a spiritual co-worker, when they were doing their commentary. I heard them talk about this. So this didn't come from me. This isn't information that came from me. But I want to revisit it and just kind of loop back around to it, because I want to know this. Was Joan Rivers connected to Lucille Ball too? Because my question is, what did Joan Rivers know? Because when that woman, and I'm going to get to Lucille Ball in a minute, because when that doctor, that unauthorized doctor, came into that operating room to do that unauthorized procedure on Joan Rivers, when she came into that room, I immediately began to fear for Joan Rivers' life. Her daughter did sue that medical center, the endoscopy medical center, and she got an undisclosed amount of money. I hope Melissa got millions upon millions of dollars, because, girl, I believe they did something to your mother on purpose. That's just what I believe. Let me say allegedly. Who was that woman? Who was that woman? And why did about to say Joan Crawford? Why did Joan Rivers? They need to do Joan Crawford's too, the autopsy of her. Why did Joan Rivers all of a sudden go into how did she deteriorate so quickly after that woman stuck that tube up her nose? Her oxygen levels began to fail and they never came back up. And then she started to go into, did she go into cardiac arrest? I believe she did. But they do shit like this right up under our nose. They're taking people out left, right, and sideways. And I think they took a lot of them people out back then, like Joan Rivers, like Whitney Houston, even Michael Jackson. That's another one. I think a lot of them were taken out because they brought a certain truth to the world. They brought a certain light frequency to the world that would have, and I think they would have been very outspoken about the agendas that are going on now. So they had to get certain people out the way to promote these agendas that they have going on now, especially what happened in 2019 and 2020 with the pandemic, with that thing. The placebo effect of shooting up people with a sugar water. But that's another story, child. Remember, I'm an occult scientist and a spiritual scientist and an intuitive person. I see the game. But that's another story. What connection did Joan Rivers have to Lucille Ball? Huh? I'm just asking a question. Not saying they did, not saying they did or did not. I'm just asking. Because what I found very interesting is this. Lucille Ball was in her late 70s when she died. Here's another case. She was in good shape. Yeah, she was a smoker. And she even had a stroke. I get that. No problem. And I think she did drink a little bit. But at the end of the day, Lucille Ball was a formidable woman. And I give her motherfucking credit because she formed her own motherfucking studio before that was even thinkable. It was unthinkable in those days for a woman to have her own studio. Desilu Productions, that was her studio. That was the old RKO studio, if I'm not mistaken. But then when Lucille Ball and her husband took it over, they turned it into Desilu Productions. Her and Desi Arnaz, her husband. So Lucille Ball dies in 1989. I believe she died on April the 26th. Let me see. When did Lucille Ball die? Now let me let y'all hear that. When did Lucille Ball die?
Lucille Ball died on April 26, 1989.
When did Carolyn Bryant die?
Carolyn Bryant died on April 25th, 2023.
Now here's where I'm going with this. Okay? Here's where I'm going with this. Now, Carolyn Bryant died April 25th of this year. Lucille Ball died April 26th of 1989. And I know most people will not pay attention to those numbers. And I don't really want to get into that practicality of that, but I'm looking at a pattern. Carolyn Bryant died under the vibration of the number 8. Lucille Ball died under the vibration of the number 7. Okay? When you put 8 and 7 together, you get 15. When you add the 1 and the 5 together, you get the number 6. When you flip that motherfucking 6, it turns into a 9. And I learned that from one of my spiritual coworkers because she talks about this a lot. So I'm learning, giving credit where credit is due. You flip that 6, it turns into a 9. Now, what I understand about the number, now that's if you go that route, but you can also go 1 times 5, and that's a 5, and it comes out to 5. Okay? Then if you take the 9 and the 5 and put it together, that's 14. And it comes out to 5 again. And what I understand about the number 5 can bring death, dread, depression, and sacrifice. That's the sacrifice of spirit, body, and everything. So going back to Lucy Ball, going back to I Love Lucy, Lucy Ball, going back to Lucy. She died in 1989. She died of an aortic, what do they call it? An aortic rupture or aneurysm or something. The aorta is, I think that's one of the main pumping chambers of the heart or something like that. And when that ruptures, it can cause excruciating pain. Well, a year before her death, because I want to give, a year or two before her death, I want to give all the information. She did have a mild stroke, but she recovered. She recovered. But then her aorta or aortic valve, it ruptured or some shit, you know. And she had to go into the hospital again. They fixed it as much as they could. But like 5 a.m, something woke her up. And it alerted her nurse's station that something was drastically wrong. And of course, Lucille Ball died. My question is, what woke her up? See, that's what I want to know. What woke her up? Because they put that in her autopsy report, you know, in the autopsy of Lucille Ball. They did the reenactment of that. And her body just like rose up, like something rose her up, as if something was pulling her life force out of her body. And see, people don't pay attention to stuff like that. See, by me being a spiritualist and an occultist, I look at shit like that. And I know what people think, well, why are you worried about that older white woman from back in the day? You know why I'm worried about that? I'm not worried about it, but you know why I'm talking about that? Because understanding what happened back then paints a picture of why Hollywood is so fucking dismal now. I think Lucille Ball could have lived. I think she could have lived a little while longer. She was doing work up until she died. Not that long ago, she was just on stage dancing. She was a woman in her 70s. She looked good. She was in good shape. She did have minor health issues that are indicative of someone in her age bracket, but who doesn't once they get in their 70s and stuff like that? You know what I'm saying? But she was primarily in good shape. But I keep finding this pattern of celebrities dying from aortic ruptures of the heart. John Ritter also died, who played Jack Tripper in Three's Company. John Ritter, he also died of an aortic rupture or something having to do with the aorta, aortic valve. I may be saying it wrong, but y'all know what I'm talking about, child. He also died from something like that. So what is the connection here? Why were these people taken out? And you know what's interesting? Allegedly taken out. Let me say it that way. Let me do this. You know what's interesting? Let me make sure that I'm right. Let me make sure that I'm right when I do this. Because nothing is, I don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe in that. What's interesting is that John Ritter, he died in 2003. He died under the vibration of the number 5. Lucille Ball died under the vibration of the number 10. You take the 5 from him, add it to the 10, you get 15. 1 times 5 is 5. And under these frequencies, that's a bad motherfucking omen for them. So you can see the sacrificial energy within that. And sometimes sacrificing is not always about somebody that's jealous. Sometimes it's just one of those things where they want you out of the way so they can put something else in your fucking place. So when I look at Joan Rivers, Lucille Ball, John Ritter, and even Barry White, I looked at his autopsy too. There was some suspicious shit surrounding him as well. And the girlfriend, not his wife Glodine, but his girlfriend, the one that he was with at the time, she started maneuvering so he would alienate, so she could basically push his children and his family to the side so she could gain access to him and I guess his fortune. And even his management company, or not management company, but his, his agents and stuff, whoever that is, you know, them people in Hollywood that run every damn thing for a person, agent, whatever. They were made his power of attorney and not his children. And Barry White was really sick. He also died in 2003. He also died in 2003. It's just been a lot of suspicious deaths. And even with Whitney Houston. With Whitney Houston, there are a lot, and I believe that her sister-in-law is telling the truth. I don't believe what that autopsy says about Whitney Houston. I think it's orchestrated. And here's another thing about that. Here's another thing. What type of game are they playing with Whitney Houston? What type of game are they playing? Because when I looked at her autopsy, they were showing the footage outside of the Beverly Hills Hotel, right? And the footage did not look like footage of 2012. It looked like footage of the early 2000s. And when they did the report, they said that there was a 46-year-old woman, unresponsive, face down in the bathtub or something like that. They were talking about Whitney Houston. But wait a minute. I thought Whitney Houston was 48 when she died. And when you look up all reports, it says she was 48 when she died in 2012. So if she was 48 when she died, why are they saying that she was 46? Why are they trying to put her under the ritual of the number 10 when she was really 48? And this begs another question. Did Whitney Houston really die in 2012? Or did she really die in 2010? Is that why they're saying that she was 46? Because if she was 46, that would have meant that she was 46 in 2010, 2 years prior. If she was 46, that would have been in 2010. And the footage looked like it could have been from early 2000s, maybe 2010. It looked very old and aged. It did not look like footage from 2012. Because footage from 2012 don't look that old. I'm just pointing things out. So what's really going on here? What is the distraction? Lucille Ball had a connection allegedly to Carolyn Bryant, some type of connection to her. And from what I understand, Carolyn Bryant had connections, like I said, not only to Lucille Ball, but to, I think, the Obamas and even the Kennedys as well, from what I understand. Carolyn Bryant recently just died at the age of 88. Not to mention Lucille Ball died at 77. 14, 1 plus 4 is 5. Here we go with that sinister 5 again. So what's really going on here? What's really going on? Why did that doctor come into that room and perform that unauthorized procedure on Joan Rivers, sticking that object up her nose? Why did she do that? That's my question. But, we're just going on about our everyday life, and nobody is questioning these things. Nobody's questioning it. They're not even talking about that young man that was murdered on the New York subway anymore. The one that the white boy grabbed him and they were subduing him because they said he was fucking with people on the subway. Remember that? They don't even talk about that story anymore. I think I've seen one thing about it not long ago. They don't talk about that anymore. It seems like they sweep a lot of things under the carpet now, don't they? It's almost as if Joan Rivers and all of these other people are forgotten. I believe that the doctor that was treating Michael Jackson, what was his name? Conrad Murray. I believe that I don't think he per se, I think he was working under someone else's tutelage. I think someone was guiding him and directing him on what to do. I don't think it was meant for Michael Jackson to wake up. I don't think it was meant for him to wake up. I think that was by design. Same thing with Whitney Houston. It's so interesting. Whitney Houston dies the same day of the was it the Grammys in 2012? And see, a lot of times we think that, oh, somebody did this, but for some case, let's just say for the sake of argument, for some of these cases, these doctors, they supply these people with these drugs so they can off themselves. These unethical, these type of doctors that work with these celebrities, they give them these drugs because they're all interconnected with the studios, with the industry, with the managers, with the Clive Davises and all that shit. They're connected with all of these people. So I'm just an occultist and I'm just asking questions. Why did that doctor go into that room and stick that instrument up Joan Rivers' nose? Why did she do that? Even when she was told that was not proper procedure, she did it anyway. She was very aggressive in doing that. But we're supposed to ignore that, right? Just like we're supposed to ignore the fact that didn't Tupac have bodyguards with him when he was murdered? Wasn't he supposed? Well, let me ask a better question. Wasn't he supposed to have bodyguards with him? It makes you really go back and wonder Did they kill Sylvia Brown? Because, they didn't like her. And I know a lot of people felt like she was a fraud and she was this and she was that or whatever. That's their opinion. Because she didn't get everything right and all that stuff about certain cases and stuff like that. Hey, I'm not here to argue that. But what did Sylvia Brown know? Put the psychic shit apart. I mean, not apart, but put that to the side. Because Sylvia Brown was in that industry. She was connected to well-known people. And Montel Williams, he basically went by the wayside. You don't never hear anything about him anymore. He never pops up anywhere anymore. You never hear anything about Montel Williams anymore. She was connected to a lot of big name people, Sylvia Brown. What did she really know? What did she really know? It might not have had anything to do with psychic stuff. It could have just been that she was privy to knowledge being within that industry. Let's just look at it that way. I'm not here to say whether she was a psychic or not. That's not my job. I'm looking at it as an occultist. People can have whatever idea they want to about her. But my question is, what did she know? Did she speak on something that she should not have spoken on? Because remember, she wrote a book about secret societies. And I know a lot of times people want to fault and blame white people for all of the ails of the world, and we can blame them for a lot of shit. But sometimes, and I don't give a fuck who gets mad about me saying this, sometimes white people be telling the motherfucking truth. And then what ends up happening is they end up getting murdered or killed or sacrificed. Same thing with Joan Rivers. Same thing with Sylvia Brown. Possibly the same thing with Marilyn Monroe. Because when we really go back and revisit, people say that the Kennedys had her murdered. I don't believe that. I don't believe JFK and Robert Kennedy had Marilyn Monroe murdered. I don't believe that. Now, I could be wrong. I think it's some deep, deep shadow type of energies, demonic type of shit that we just don't know about. And when I say demonic, I mean principalities working through humans. I think it was bigger than the president and bigger than the United States government. I don't think it was the government that killed Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe liked black people. She liked black people. She was friends with Dorothy Dandridge, and I believe she was friendly also with Ella Fitzgerald. She liked black people, from what I understand. I'm always up for correction, but that from what I understand, she liked black people. Is that why they took her out? Did they take her out because she had a respect level for black people in a time where black people were looked at as animals? Well, really and truthfully, they still look at us in a very fucked up way. But now they have, their honorary people, the non-whites, but who are also non-black. They have them to go along with their bullshit too. You know what I'm saying? I was looking at, on a side note, I was looking at something on another video. And it was this white guy, I think he was on TikTok, and he was talking about how black people who say white people are not that racist. He was a white guy. Now, let me remind you, he's a white guy saying this. He said that if you believe that as a black person, then you should basically be a fly on the wall when you leave a room full of white people. He said, if you believe that white people are not that racist, then you should be a fly on the wall when you, as a black person, leaves the room. And the horrible things that they say about black people. This is a white guy saying this. He's on TikTok. And I already know that. I know how white people get down. I do. I know how some white people get down. I do. I get it. Got it. But then he went on to say how non-black people, they will do the exact same thing in a room full of white people. They will talk really grimy and nasty about black people to get points with racist white people. But he's not telling us anything that we don't already know. But I do think black people need to be reminded of that. I do think it's worth reminding black people of that shit. And this ain't no disrespect to, anyone that's a decent, white person. It's not that. But I'm just looking at the culture and the things that we sweep under the carpet in general, or the things that we don't want to remember, or the things that we just don't want to accept are happening or is happening, whichever one you want to choose, right in front of our face. Are we supposed to ignore that? Are we supposed to ignore the fact or look over the fact or gloss over the fact that Katy Perry looks a lot like JonBenet Ramsey? Are we supposed to gloss over that fact? Are we supposed to ignore what Judge Joe Brown said on that panel about Tina Turner? And I love me some Tina Turner. Don't get me wrong. I love her. I love her talent. I don't know her as a person. But Judge Joe Brown had some very, very not so nice things to say about Tina Turner. And I believe every motherfucking word he said. We don't know them personally. But see, these are things that happen right in front of our face sometimes, or we see it and we want to sweep it under the carpet. Any of these celebrities that I talk about, I may like their talent, but I don't know them to like them. I don't worship celebrities. I use them as a talking point in my occultism because they come from Hollywood where they practice occultism and spiritualism and ritualism and all that types of shit. Hollywood is built off of that. So they are good case studies. I consider myself a Hollywood occultist. I'm into Hollywood occultism. I have been since I was 15 years old. I've always been into the mysteries of Hollywood. The mysterious deaths like of Marilyn Monroe, Natalie Wood. I've been into that shit since I was in my teenage years, in the early 90s. I would go through the grocery stores looking for magazines about the mysterious deaths of different old-time Hollywood stars. Because I want to understand what happened. But back then, I didn't understand the significance of the occult and spiritualism and ritualism and sacrifice that went along with this. See, that was the only part I was lacking in. But I was always drawn to these types of things. Just like they're parading this picture around of this nun I think her name is Wilhelmina something. She was a black nun that died at the age of 94 or 95. And they have basically, if they dug up her corpse and they have her corpse out for display, or they did. And they were saying how her body has not decomposed in the past few years because she died in 2019. And they're amazed how her body has not decomposed. Excuse me. What type of ritualism is that? Are they trying to pull some type of, I don't know, some type of demonic energy from her? What type of shit is that? So I'm into stuff like this. I'm into morbid, scary stuff like this. This is what makes me a good occultist. So I want to be clear. It's not about me liking the celebrity. It's about me understanding. So are we supposed to sit back and say, oh, Judge Joe Brown, he's just lying? Tina Turner wasn't no pimp. She wasn't pimping and trafficking women. How do we really know that that's not true? How do we know that? How do we know the story that they told and what's love got to do with it, with her and Ike Turner? How do we know if that's even accurate? I'm just looking at it, and I don't give a fuck who it offends. How do we know that that happened in that way? Because I'm going to tell you something. There are women who've been abused like that. There are women who've actually been abused like that. And if that story is not real as it is in that movie, then that is a slap in the face to real domestic violence victims. And it's not just one group of women that are victims of domestic violence. White women get beaten too by their husbands. Latin and Mexican women, they get beaten by their husbands too. Across the board, women have been victims of domestic violence, for a long time. So and this is not the first time that I've heard these things about Tina Turner. And then we have to look at her connection to Miss Robbie from Welcome to Sweetie Pies. Let me say allegedly, because Miss Robbie liked to sue people. Because we have to look at that too. We have to look at the fact, was Ike and Tina allegedly trafficking women? Because from what I understand, both of them, Ike and Tina, were prostituting and trafficking women. From what I understand, from what I've heard. And I'm not ragging on her and being disrespectful about her talent or her memory or who she became. But I'm talking about what she was back in the past. I still love Tina Turner music. I still love her views on death and spirituality. But that doesn't mean that a person doesn't have skeletons or demons in their closet. So what's her connection to Miss Robbie? What's Miss Robbie's connection to Ike Turner? See, the point that I'm making is this. I'm making a point. When you look far enough, you will find connections every motherfucking way you go. You will find connections everywhere you go. You will find pieces of the puzzle everywhere you go. That is really what I'm getting at. It's not about disrespecting a person's memory, because I know a lot of people might take it that way, which I don't give a fuck if you do or not. I'm going to speak my motherfucking truth. This is what I do. I am the occult view. But we very well cannot examine Ike Turner without examining Tina Turner as well. And did she have some hand in the trafficking going on as well? They know how to clean people up very good in Hollywood. It's called glamour. It's called glamour. Now, these are all allegations and alleging, okay? I don't know if this is true or not. It may be true. It may not be true, okay? But the bottom line is we don't know any of these people personally. And she was a Sagittarius. Sagittarius, they're very interesting. Let's just say that, child. Okay, child. They're very interesting. Okay. So let's keep that in mind. And no disrespect to any Sagittarius out there, but I'm just saying. I'm just looking at all of these connections. Lucille Ball, Carolyn Bryant, Joan Rivers, John Ritter. Barry White, Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson. All of these people taken out, most of them in their prime. Whitney Houston was in her prime. And they just kept feeding her drugs. It was self depravity, self destruction. Anyway, this is just a little video I decided to come through with today. I'm about to go make my dinner. I'm having me some crab cakes tonight, and they're going to be good. My friend, he going to like them when they come in probably, unless he eats some of that goulash that I made the other day. But anyway, this is your host, The Occult View. I hope this video did not hurt anyone's feelings or trigger them. But if it did, maybe it will trigger you to think. And if it hurts your feelings, maybe it will, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it'll do something. I don't know. Hopefully it didn't hurt your feelings though, because that's not what I'm here to do. I'm just here to make people look outside of the box. That's it. You know, that's it. But anyway, that's all I have to say. And thank you for watching or listening.